so the 107 and the recommendation is to cover obviously the mention up there, which is 9 to 12 months. That's the one that you're working within the unit in regards to your department.
That's correct. We will look at what the options are. And
It's 175, sorry, not 107.5. Okay.
175.
so we will, the paper that we prepare will look at the implications around that funding on other activities that you've also chosen to fund and provide guidance on where those opportunities may or may not lie.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I welcome you back. It's good to see you here. I have a question, but before I touch on that, because there has been a long association with ARMS and this council, and the awareness that I have on the work that it has undertaken for our community for a very long period of time, and recognising the government in its desire to ensure economic independence and empowerment of our ethnic communities, perhaps may have overlooked some of the social needs of our refugee and migrant community. And to that end, I was wondering whether Dame Susan Devoy could be permitted to speak on what her involvement has been with ARMS over recent years.
That's a question for you, Dave.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. I think I was approached to be a patron of ARMS not long after I started in my role with the Human Rights Commission, and it fits very succinctly with my mandate. I think, unfortunately, Mary repeatedly has to come to organisations for funding, and while we can debate the merits of who's responsible, whether it's central government or local government, Councillor Fletcher raises really important issues around the social implications of the lack of funding in these services. So I know personally that Mary has delivered well and beyond the call of duty. If you look at examples like the Wise Women's Project, that's done through fundraising and hours and volunteers, and enabling empowering women actually to develop their own lives and self-esteem and develop their own work streams. So I don't know how you quantify that. Well, you would understand how you measure that effect. So I think whilst the withdrawal of the MB funding is possibly catastrophic to an organisation like ARMS unless someone else steps in, we do need to raise the question with government as to how they see migrants in terms of they are seeing them currently as economic migrants. So what ARMS is doing, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I'd hate to predict the consequences if we draw the funding of an organisation like ARMS, who provides such enormous value in terms of social cohesion for communities that are actually at risk.
Thank you.
And I suppose the second part to my question is that there has been an awareness of the presence of ARMS for that community, and it's been a stable presence over those years. Perhaps for some who may not be aware of the work of ARMS, the base that they have in Mount Roskill has been well placed to serve those communities. Mr. Chairman, I think it's really important, without wanting to in any way interfere with the proposal by Mr. Kimpton, and I too want to acknowledge Graham Bodman, who has been working with us over the last month to try and come up with appropriate support. But I do think it is important that we go to government identifying the way in which ARMS has delivered that social gap for those who are challenged with arriving in New Zealand and facing new lives. That has not, in the report that I have read, been adequately covered, and I know Councillor Anai is speaking with ATED and looking at those areas of economic empowerment, but we have not seen a satisfactory explanation on the provision of services on those very real and raw social issues which new migrants have to confront. So I would be supportive, if Mr. Kimpton is crafting a proposal here, I would be supportive and happy to see strong advocacy to central government on that particular dimension.
Mr. Kimpton's working on it at the moment, so we'll have Councillor Cashmore.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Dame Susan And Mary, thank you for the presentation. I remember when you first came and spoke to us last year, it was inspiring the sort of work that you do, and our ethnic diversity and increasing number of immigrants in this country, being so fortunate as we are, I would like you to receive. It's important that we deliver a very good service at central government level and local government level to enable and help our New Zealanders as they arrive. So when MB came to you, Mary, with this downgrade of or elimination of your budget, you must have had discussions with them about where they saw the gaps and how they were going to be filled. Could you give us a very brief outline of how those went?
Councillor Cashmore, do you mean a discussion around what they thought we should do to fill the gap?
Or what MB thought how the gap should be filled?
No, not really. They they made the decision based on the review that had been carried out of their priorities, and as far as they're concerned, those priorities do not cover the work that we were doing under our contract, and therefore they certainly intimated that they thought that settlement is now, in their view, council responsibility, much more than it ever was, and that was kind of the signal we got. I think it's a moot point myself, but I do think that the history of the council in supporting arms is not strong, and that we have repeatedly said that we feel that the council should fund us to a higher level than they have. But no other indication from MB in terms of where they thought the gap, how the gap should be filled.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Crum.
Thank you, and thank you for your time, Mary and Dame Devoy. By anyone's analysis, ARMS has a significant footprint in the city, and just in the ethnic panel alone, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone in the ethnic panel that doesn't have some tangible or almost tangible connection to ARMS. My question for you, to get some clarity around the perception that the withdrawal of MB funding has prompted you to then come to council asking for additional support. My understanding is that you've been requesting support from us over a significant period.
5.
Okay, so could you just give a little bit of clarity on your understanding of those 5 years of requests, and dovetailing off that, I'd like to support Dean Kimpton's proposed way forward. You outlined a few options, Dean. I think they're all good to go, because at some point we need to make decisions here internally as a table without pointing fingers elsewhere consistently. So your understanding of our 5-year journey with you and the funding request today?
The way I see it is that ARMS' existence has been paralleled by this huge increase of migrants coming into the city, but it's also paralleled the establishment of the Unitary Council. So prior to the amalgamation process for the council, ARMS was doing reasonably well. We had several contracts with MB and so on. Then we hit the amalgamation phase, and that was not a time in which the council really could be looking at some of these issues that we were starting to be concerned about, i.e. our sustainability. Should government funding drop away? So I think what we've faced is the realisation that council has been in the process of A, amalgamating, B, then developing a unitary funding policy, and that has taken a long time, and there has not been the opportunity then to seek regional funding despite asking through submissions time and time again for consideration as a community partner. It just appeared, all I can say is that really, however many times we presented, it was never the right time for the council. Now that there is a regional funding process, yes, we could go into that. But that is insufficient for our needs right now. And also, I don't think it gives sufficient due regard to the role that ARMS can play with council, for council, and with communities and for communities under the empowered communities approach.
Thank you.
Can I just add something there? I think, you know, the issue here is the direction that central government are taking towards their interpretation of who and what a migrant is. So what ARMS does, that's really, really important, is actually a voice for the smaller ethnic communities, including the refugee communities who actually have the highest needs. Or the immigration is very much skewed toward Asian, particularly in the Chinese market, seeing them as a skilled, capable services being able to deliver online, which is, you know, makes a lot of sense. But Mary addresses some of the needs of the people that actually, if those aren't addressed early on, will actually have the largest cost benefit to everyone in this community going forward. I just would quote Citizens Advice Bureau having the contract in terms of providing that support for migrants. Well, I think that's in review currently, but that also has some issues posing because of the diversity of the people that are actually delivering the services to the diversity of the people, if you get what I mean. It reflects the diversity around this table a little bit. And so there are things that, you know, are really not quantifiable and you know, ARMS no longer exists in South Auckland, and that is brought up to me a lot by the local communities. Where do people go for support and help that don't have transport to get to Mount Roskill?
Thank you. The last question was Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Mary and Dame Susan, and thank you for the great work that we do at ARMS. I know we're well aware of that. And it must be extremely frustrating what's going on. The question that's in my mind is that MB is saying they are delivering some of the things that you do. And I just want to identify where this duplication service is going to be that they are saying they're doing and where the gap is with what we're doing in ARMS. Because that's where the whole area stands right now. We need to strengthen what you're doing and put aside what they are saying they're going to do. And as Dame Susan has just said, there's a difference in their thinking to what we see. And the reality is Auckland is growing at a pace with migrants. It's not slowing down, and their contribution to Auckland is critical of what we've been trying to do. So those are the questions.
Yes, I think it's really important to be clear about the contract that we've lost was a contract that required ARMS to run and coordinate a lot of activities with service providers. So the NGO sector, voluntary sector, government departments, anyone that's providing services to new migrants or migrants generally. And we were running those activities in order to enhance the responsiveness of the city to the needs of the increasing cultural diverse residents. So that was a contract that kept us extremely busy, working with over 500 service providers throughout a year. Into those meetings could also come new migrants. That's the contract we've lost. Now, MB's priorities are all about working with the employers in the business sector. So they are no longer seeing service providers as a priority group. They are really seeing the employers in the business sector and the employer-facing organisations as their groups that they want to work with. So when they say they're taking on some of our activities, there's effectively two that they will be hands-on working with. One is a regional settlement steering group that I have convened for several years, and one is the regional settlement network. My understanding is that though the membership of both of those activities or those groups will be slanted towards bringing in employers and business organisations in order to try and get more traction with those organisations through that greater leadership role that MBC needs to have on the ground in Auckland. That therefore leaves quite a vacuum around the coordination of service provision and working with service providers to adopt good practice. And there is only one of those activities that's left to be run in the community, and that is local settlement networks in the sub-regions, so 4 of those. And MB's word on that is those local settlement networks shall run themselves.
So just on that then, who has the responsibility of new migrants feeding into government agencies and council work, etc.? Who's taken that responsibility to make sure that these people are au fait with how this city works?
So in the previous review, prior to this review, the review that prior to this one was of the Settlement Support New Zealand model. There were 18 settlement support initiatives up and down the country. That model was dissolved, and there was a bidding process for the delivery of information to new migrants. MB provided that contract to the CABs up and down the country. So the responsibility for delivering information to newcomers, migrants in particular, now falls on the CABs. And yeah, that's it really.